It's Friday. That means it's Brunch with Bernie. Senator Bernie Sanders with us for our national town hall meeting, taking your calls here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Senator Sanders, welcome.
Good to be with you, Tom.
Good to have you with us. What do you see going on in the Senate and the House and Congress and the nation that you think is really important and interesting right now?
Well, everything related to the fiscal cliff is important. It's interesting, but the question is, what are we going to do about it? I think everybody knows by now that if an agreement is not reached by the end of this year, taxes are going to go up for everybody in this country. And I think given the fact that so many people in the middle class and the working class are hurting, that is a bad idea. And I think the overwhelming majority of members in the House and Senate understand that. So I think the first thing that we've got to do is make sure that taxes do not go up on the bottom 98% of the American people. The problem that we have, and we passed that legislation in the Senate, that's what we did. In the House now, you really have what looks to me a chaotic situation where you have a significant group of Tea Party extreme right-wingers who do not want to do what the American people have been very clear that they should do, and that is to ask the wealthiest people in this country to start paying their fair share of taxes. Tom, just the other day, there was a poll done by the Washington Post and ABC reflecting what we have seen over and over and over again. In this poll, 74% of the American people, including significant numbers of Republicans, Independents, Democrats, all said, yes, we should ask people making $250,000 a year or more to pay more in taxes to help us with deficit reduction. American people are overwhelmingly supportive of that, and yet you have right-wing extremists in the House who do not want to see that happen. What their view is, and it's a really interesting and probably maybe almost a unique political moment, because you have the House today controlled by people who are way, way, way out of touch with what the American people want. Their view is that we should not, a significant number, not all, of the Republicans believe we should not ask millionaires and billionaires to pay a nickel more in taxes, but we should make significant cuts in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veterans programs, education, nutrition, and a variety of other programs. I believe, honestly, Tom, in my heart of hearts, I don't think that program, that concept, is supported by more than 15 or 20% of the American people. I don't believe a majority of Republicans support that program. And yet that is where your right-wing extremist House of Representatives is right now. So my own view is not different from what I think you've articulated a moment ago. And that is what the president should say is, look, I tried, I made concessions, I reached out. It is clear that right now the House of Representatives does not have a governing structure. They cannot make decisions. So I'm going to rescind the compromises that I made, and I'm going to stand with the American people. And that is, we are not going to go forward with the so-called chain CPI, which would make significant cuts in Social Security and in veterans programs, and raise taxes, by the way, for a lot of low-income working families. Tom, I had a press conference. I am the incoming chairman of the Veterans Committee. And I just held a press conference on Wednesday with over 30 veterans organizations, the American Legion, VFW, Disabled American Veterans, the Iraqi, Afghanistan veterans organizations, all of them. And what they said is, quite correctly, veterans of this country, especially disabled veterans, they've already sacrificed. They have paid some really heavy-duty prices in terms of arms, in terms of legs, in terms of hearing, in terms of eyesight. This is not an equivalent ask. It's wrong to say, okay, we're going to take even more from veterans and maybe a little bit something from the rich. The wealthiest people in this country are doing phenomenally well. Corporations are enjoying record-breaking profits. And in both instances, the effective tax rates for the wealthy are very, very low. And we got 1 out of 4 profitable corporations paying nothing in taxes. So What we should not be saying is, yeah, we're going to cut Social Security. Yeah, we're going to ask the rich to pay a little bit more in taxes. That's wrong. The middle class is declining. People are struggling day and night to keep their heads above water economically. We cannot attack them more and more. It is going to have to be the wealthy, the large corporations. I just voted against a few minutes ago the DOD, Department of Defense authorization bill. I think we got to make judicious, intelligent cuts in defense spending. We can do this deficit reduction in a way that is fair. We can come up with enough money to invest in rebuilding our infrastructure, transforming our energy system, and creating millions of jobs. So that's the task: create jobs, do deficit reduction in a way that is fair. And I think it is wrong to compromise and succumb to bullyism in the House. People who say, hey, you're going to have to do it our way. Well, no, we don't care what the American people believe. You have to do what we want. And I hope the president does not go in that direction.
Senator John Boehner said something really interesting just a short while ago. He said that they asked him, what are you going to do next? And, where's this going to go? And he literally said, God knows. And then he said in the House, they have a blue slip problem. In other words, you guys in the Senate passed a bill that would have cut taxes on everybody earning under $250,000, but raised taxes on people earning over $250,000, and didn't, cut Social Security and everything else. You guys passed that in the Senate, sent it to the House. And the problem that Boehner identified is that the Constitution says all spending legislation has to originate in the House. So would it be possible for the House, for the Senate to take a bill that has been passed by the House already, empty it of its contents, basically, pour into it the bill that has already passed the Senate, pass that, send it back to the House for reconciliation? I realize I'm getting super wonky here, but...
No, you're not super. The answer is, of course. I mean, we got some very smart people who understand all of the rules. So the answer is yes. I mean, that is... But that's...
Is he basically asking the Senate to do his work for him?
Look, I think where he is in a very difficult position. Not that I feel very sorry for Mr. Boehner, but what you have now is political Republican representatives who are living in their own world, and they're now coming face to face with reality, and they can't govern. And I think what our position should be is to make the American people absolutely clear about that, because if the Republicans of the House don't get their act together, if they continue to defy what 80, 90% of the American people want, they're not going to have much of a political party left. They're going to be just a marginal fringe party. So I think we have got to just make Boehner and his Republican friends aware of how far out of reality they are, how far removed they are from where ordinary Americans are. And if they don't get their act together and come up with something sensible in terms of deficit reduction, they're not going to have much of a party left.
Yeah. On the other hand, if something gets blue slipped, if it gets bounced back and forth like that, it ends up in reconciliation, and that's where the NDAA that you just voted against, where Dianne Feinstein's amendment that would have taken out indefinite detention, that's where it got removed, and we're still not sure by whom.
Look, the problem is not some kind of technical rules issue.
Right.
The problem is I think Boehner indicated, the Republican caucus is in chaos. Nobody knows what's going on there.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Okay. Well said. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us. He'll be taking your calls right after this in our Brunch with Bernie National Town Hall with Senator Sanders. It's 15 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And just a heads up, the Thom Hartmann Program, all 3 hours live in our new home in Seattle, Washington, 93.1 FM KBCS, beginning January 2nd. And welcome back, Bob in East Liverpool, Ohio. You are on the, and thanks for watching Free Speech TV on Dish Network. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
How you doing, Tom and Mr. Sanders? How you doing?
Good.
Look, I was just saying, I was pushed into a corner here with the way the president has put my money, my last nickel out. And what do we do? I mean, You just answered my question, actually, but truthfully, I want to know, is this going to happen?
There's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, all that we do know now is that in the House, they apparently seem to be incapable of doing anything that's vaguely sensible to deal with the fiscal cliff. That's one thing that we know. The second thing that we know is we know where the American people are. And the American people understand that when median family income has gone down by over $3,000 in the last 10 years, where millions of Americans are working longer hours for lower wages, where you got God knows how many kids graduating college deeply in debt, that you got to protect the middle class. And you do have to ask the wealthy and large corporations to pay more in taxes. The American people are there. That's what they want. And I think we have got to tell this president very clearly, Mr. President, do not cut, the Republicans have been, when Republicans talk about, and I hope everybody understands this, they use the phrase entitlement reform. Everybody must understand that what that means in English is cuts in Social Security, cuts in Medicare, and cuts in Medicaid. The American people do not want to see those cuts. So what you're really arguing about here is not a great fiscal debate. It is a political debate in which the wealthy, in which Wall Street, large corporations are on one side, and many of them, not all of them, by the way, but many of them are saying, no, we don't want to pay any more in taxes. You go after working families. You go after the elderly. We had CEOs of large corporations, CEOs of Wall Street, Lloyd Blankfein from Goldman Sachs coming here and saying, you got to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. This guy's worth a couple of $100 million, gets this incredible retirement package, gets bailed out by the taxpayers of this country, and he comes here to Washington and says, cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. That's some of the mentality out there. We have to resist that.
Yeah. It's and I think a subtext, we have just a little less than a minute to the break, Bernie. I think the subtext to his question was, is this chain CPI thing going to go away?
I'm doing everything I can to make it go away. I think you have the Republic. This is what the Republicans want because it's a backdoor way. It's a backdoor way. What it would mean is you change the way we configure inflation. You make it stingier, which means that if you're 65 today, if that were to go into effect, when you're 75, you get about $600 a year less. When you are 85, it's, I believe, $1,100 a year or less. And it also means significant cuts for disabled veterans. So that is something that we are going to strongly oppose.
Okay. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. More with Senator Sanders at sanders.senate.gov, by the way. Check out his website. It's spectacular. More with Senator Sanders right after this. 20 minutes past the hour. The world was supposed to end 8 hours and 40 some odd minutes ago. Ain't happened, so I guess we're okay. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you.
You mean we have to do the show next week, Tom? Is that what it means?
I guess so, Bernie.
All right.
And a good thing it is. Les in Farmington, Michigan. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, good afternoon to you guys.
Hi.
What about the unemployment insurance? Isn't that connected to this fiscal cliff?
Absolutely.
And if it is, why is...
Les, thank you for asking that. The answer is yes, it is. And what people have got to understand, I know there's a lot of stuff out there. The fiscal, going over the so-called fiscal cliff is very different than not addressing the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling means that if you don't extend and raise the debt ceiling, it means that the United States of America, the wealthiest, most powerful nation on earth, defaults on its debts. That's what it means. And this will have huge international financial consequences. Fiscal cliff is something very different. that is an agreement made that if we do not come up with an agreement on how to do deficit reduction, certain budgetary measures take place. Now, the worst part of it, to my mind, is what Les is raising, and that is a significant number of folks who today are desperately in need of continued unemployment compensation. Some of those people will not get those checks unless we can figure out a way to make that happen, and we're working on that as well. That is a very dangerous implication of going over the financial cliff. On the other hand, in terms of, while it is true that theoretically at least everybody's taxes would go up, the truth is we will have months and months to deal with that issue before it really has any impact. And I do not believe that at the end of the day that 98% of the people in this country are going to end up paying more in their income taxes. But and in terms of major cuts in domestic spending, we also have time to deal with that. This is a 10-year package, and we can prevent those cuts for at least a couple of months. So the immediate danger of going over the fiscal cliff is not that everybody's taxes are going to really go up. It's not that very important programs are really going to be cut on the first day. It's not going to happen. What will happen, as Les points out, and which is a very, very bad thing, is that there will be people who will not be getting their unemployment checks, and those folks need those checks.
Reginald in Houston, Texas. You're watching us on Free Speech
I'm
TV.
glad to see you guys made it through the Mayan calendar. Glad to be back. The UBS and a lot of these big banks are paying back these penalties for defrauding the people. If those penalties were for defrauding the people, shouldn't the people get back those, be able to recoup some of those, some of the penalty money that's being given to the government and should go to the people? And I just want to know, if they can recoup that, how would it come back in a form of a rebate or something that went toward the student loans, the housing, or whatever they defrauded them from? Shouldn't it go back to that area to revert? And how was your vote today on the National Defense Authorization Act, Bernie? Appreciate y'all.
I voted no on the Reauthorization Act. But Reginald asks a enormously important question, which would take a very, very long time to answer. I think what Reginald is saying, and he'll forgive me for kind of broadening his question, is that on Wall Street and with major banks, you have, in many cases, business models which are basically fraudulent, that for many, many years now, including leading up to the fiscal crisis, which brought us into this recession, resulted in so many people losing their jobs, their homes, their life savings, that you have a small number of very powerful financial institutions who are running on a fraudulent business model, who could care less about the American people. How do we address that issue? And Reginald, all that I can tell you is that these guys are so very powerful in terms of their campaign contributions, in terms of their lobbying capabilities, that I have serious doubts whether the Congress is capable of taking them on. So when people talk about Congress regulating Wall Street, what I often say is the converse is true. It is Wall Street regulating the United States Congress. I think we need to take some very dramatic and fundamental steps. Number one, when you have the sixth largest financial institutions in this country owning assets equivalent to 2/3 of the GDP of America, that is just too much control, too much power in too few hands. You got to break up these large financial institutions. Number two, you need major reform in terms of the Federal Reserve. We have the heads of major financial institutions, Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase being one example, sitting on regional feds. That is just a huge conflict of interest. So, bottom line is, these guys on Wall Street, big banks, have ripped off the American people in every which way. We've got to take them on. There are a lot of good ideas out there, a lot of good pieces of legislation out there, including a a speculation tax on Wall Street transactions. A lot of good ideas out there, but don't hold your breath about seeing those pieces of legislation get implemented. These guys are just enormously powerful on Wall Street.
Bernie, we just have 45 seconds to the break, so not enough time to take a call. But one of Reginald's questions was, where does the money go when somebody pays a fine? That just goes into the general fund, doesn't it?
Yes, that's my understanding, yes.
Yeah. So is there going to be any recovery by Americans who've been robbed by these banksters, the robo-signing and things?
Well, that's certainly something we want to see, yes. Yeah. The answer is absolutely. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Let's hope. Senator Bernie Sanders is on the line with us. Our Brunch with Bernie hour, our national town hall meeting here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Your calls for Senator Sanders coming up right after this. Be sure and check out Bernie's website. It's a great news aggregation site. It's a great news site and source in and of itself. Plus, he's got a newsletter there that you can sign up for, the Bernie Buzz. It's all at sanders.senate.gov.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
And, of course, you can drop into our live chat room. You can participate in our message boards. You can be part of our community. You can create your own blog over at thomhartmann.com. Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. It's Thom Hartmann with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders in the Senate studios on the air with us in our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie. And Diane in Lansing, Michigan, you are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Tom. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you. Senator Sanders, my question is, if they can limit the amount of bottles of cough syrup I can buy, why can't they limit the amount of ammunition that people buy? And can we put a 1-cent tax on every bullet that's sold? That would be income.
Well, Dan, I don't agree with that particular remedy, but clearly we have to do something with the kinds of horrendous mass killings that we have seen. And I think what happened in Connecticut last week in Newtown, is unspeakable, and I think has shaken this country to its core. I think when we talk about mass killings, we have to understand a couple of things. That right now in this country, there exists this is really incredible but true, somewhere near 300 million guns, one gun per person. We also have to understand that we do a very, very bad job in terms of providing mental health, counseling and treatment for people who need it. It is very clear today that there are thousands of people, and I know we have gotten calls from families in the state of Vermont, people who are really hurting, people who may be suicidal, people who may be homicidal, who need help, and they can't access that help. And I will tell you that some of the proposals that my Republican colleagues have in terms of cutting back on Medicaid, cutting back on Medicare, will only make that lack of access to mental health even worse. And the third point that I would make in terms of how we have to deal with these mass killings is, I get appalled, and I say that as a father of 4 and a grandfather of 7. If you look at these video games, if you look at some of the movies out there, some stuff that's on TV, there is so much gratuitous violence. And I can't help but think that just desensitizes children and people in general to what it is about. When you have films where people are spraying guns and killing people, it desensitizes you to death and killing. So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done. I think certainly guns are an important part of what has to be done. I think we have to make absolutely certain that guns, these very powerful weapons, do not fall into the hands of people who are mentally ill, et cetera, et cetera. There are a number of things that we have to do with guns, but trust me, I think if you only pass gun control today, it wouldn't address the totality of the problem.
Peter in Voorheesville, New York. You're on the air with Senator Bernie Sanders.
Well, it's a pleasure to talk to both you, Tom, and Senator Sanders. My question is, I'm wondering if we're not looking at 1933, history repeating itself, in regards to FDR saying we have nothing to fear but fear itself, and if the private sector will not hire the men, then the government will, and he hired 12 million men. I contrast that with across the Atlantic Ocean with 1933 with Hitler embracing fear and using it to control the people, burning down the right staff and blaming it on the communists and uniting the people against a common enemy and putting his workers back to work at making war materials and destroying his country rather than FDR rebuilding the country.
Well, Peter, this is what I would say with, without having to go back to 1933. And of course, you're right. What FDR proposed was massive infrastructure programs, putting people back to work, where what Hitler did is created a huge military operation, which also put people back to work, but focused their hatred against Jews and other minorities.
Bernie, I'm sorry. We just got a call from apparently your staff that you've got a roll call vote in 8 minutes you got to run to. And so I guess we have to, if you want to finish your thought.
Yeah, let me finish my thoughts and I'll go up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Peter, in the midst of this deficit reduction talk, and deficit reduction is an important issue. We got a $16 trillion national debt. We got to deal with that stuff. But we cannot for one moment understand that we have almost 15% of our people who are unemployed or underemployed. And a lot of people are hurting out there. And at the same time, we have so much work that has to be done in this country in terms of rebuilding our infrastructure and in terms of transforming our energy system to help us deal with global warming. So if Peter's point is that right now is an opportune moment to put people to work, and by the way, when you put people to work and those people and businesses start paying taxes, it also helps us with deficit reduction. So my point, and I think it's what Peter is saying, is, yeah, we got to deal with deficit reduction, but we cannot forget that so many of our people are hurting financially and are unemployed, and we have got to create those jobs. And with that, Tom, I think I'm going to run in and vote.
Okay, Bernie,
I
thank
will
you.
try to get back if I can. I don't know if I can. Okay,
Great.
take care.
We'll be here. Thank you.